Hey everybody, welcome to the Trap House Podcast. My name is Justin Jett. Thanks for tuning in. Episode 4. Episode 3 with Jerry and Albers was well received. Might be the best show yet. So make sure if you haven't heard it, make sure you backtrack and listen to that one. But today is all about fur. We're doing a little fur talk discussion with a good buddy of ours, Dennis Cobb. He's located here in Indiana. And he's dealt with fur for a long time, and so has Charlie. So it's a good little convo between us three, hanging out, talking about current prices and pitting fur up. Anything fur is, it's on here. So, and we'll probably go through these every now and then from time to time, especially when there's a sale going on. We might talk about current prices and things like that, but but before we jump into that, I want to go ahead and thank our sponsor, Hoosier Trapper Supply. One-stop shop there. If you anything and everything you need to get going out there on the trap line, as far as lure, bait, supplies, got it covered. So make sure you check out HoosierTrapperSupply.com and pick up something special. But that's pretty much it. Things are rolling good. Thanks for all the comments. Looks like the numbers are going up each week, so proud to be a part of this. So let's jump into it. Episode 4 with Dennis Cobb and Charlie. See ya. All right, we're here with a good friend of ours, Dennis Cobb. Dennis?
Hello, men. How are you?
Thanks for being here.
And women.
Yep. Charlie here. Co-host, the man.
I'm here to keep things straight.
He's here to monitor what's going on. Because me and Dennis jack around a lot.
This could get interesting.
So why don't you guys start out with what do you call each other?
Poncho and Lefty.
I'm Lefty.
And I'm Poncho.
He's Poncho.
Yep. But we're going to be talking about fur and fur prices and fur sales and let the fur fly.
Yep.
Before we get started, though, we should probably dive into a little bit about what Dennis does and how he ties into all this fur business.
I have got my own little business where trappers and hunters harvest their fur. They skin it, bring it to me. I flesh it and dry it and get it ready to sell. I started this probably 12, 13 years ago as just a little thing to do on the side. And it's grown considerably to where it's more than I can handle by myself.
Well, that's a good problem.
Yeah, it's, I work here out of a little spot in Indiana, but I have customers from all over the Midwest, Tennessee, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky. I've done coon from Wisconsin and Iowa.
So you've done some real coons.
Yeah, I've done some of the real ones. Like I said, when I started 12, 13 years ago, it was something to keep me in spare money. I was going through a bad period of my life where, I couldn't work enough to make enough money. And I had a couple buyers step up and brought me product to do, and it's just grown ever since.
Okay.
So, you started originally, though, when you were handling fur in high school or just out of high school, right?
Yeah, I started working. My brother trapped, and I'd go with him to run his traps. I couldn't catch a mouse, so, but, he'd take it to the local fur buyer. And I thought, well, since I really can't trap, maybe I can come up here and work. And sure enough, I started working in a fur shed when I was 13.
That was for Nelson Teeters, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in Noblesville. And that was back in the 70s during the fur boom. And, well, I can't believe how much fur we put up back then. But, it's been over 45 years. So I worked fur for him for 10 or 12 years and did a little bit on the side to help some people out and kind of got away from it for 15 years or so, and then I got back into it. And boy, I've met a lot of nice people, and I've done a lot of fur.
And that and a lot of people know Dennis. I mean, he's goes to most of the national conventions, and I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that you don't really trap. You're just like being around trappers. And
everybody asks me every year, how much fur did you get this year? And I said, well, I bought a little bit, but how much did you catch? I said, I've never caught fur. I've never trapped. And it really shocks people.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going, well, how do you do all this? I said, well, it's just what I learned to do. And it's like the feeling you guys get when you pull up and see a coyote in a trap. You know, you're excited and happy. I'm the same way when I get done fleshing 100 raccoons and see them up there on the ceiling.
The end
drying.
result is satisfying.
Yep. I'm just as satisfied with what I do or more than a lot of the trappers are when they make a successful catch and have a successful season. I'm just really proud of what I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and like you said, the people were around, and it's just a good bunch of people.
Yep. I can't say enough. If it wasn't for the people, I mean, Charlie's done a lot for me as far as sending people my way for business. The guys in Kentucky Fur Takers. Of course, Paul Brown's gone now, but Paul Brown used to get me all kinds of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I never dreamed that it would turn into the small business that it turned into. I just, I had people from Arkansas and Alabama calling me wanting to bring me fur. South Carolina wanting to bring me beaver hides to do.
I'm assuming it's a decent amount for if they're going to make a trip like that. They got a load to give you.
Yeah, I mean, how many beaver do you have? About 250. I'll do them. But, I mean, I've had people bring me fur from Reelsfoot Lake. A guy drove 8 hours to bring me a pickup truckload of fur to put up. But I try to hit as many sales as I can every year. I try to go to all the national conventions. There's just a lot of people that I know and have met that have done a lot for me.
Yeah. Well, being on this, you might get more work. If you're already covered up, you might regret doing this podcast.
Well, I mean, and obviously you're busy because you do a good job.
Right.
And you're
I take great pride in what I do.
Right.
You've hired me to do a job for you, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I haven't cut a hide in a long time, but I'm not going to say that I don't. And when I cut, you bring me a hide and I cut it, I'm going to tell you, I don't try to hide anything. And if you bring me 226 raccoons, you're going to get your 226 raccoons back. I take a lot of pride in taking care of my customers. I want to be taken care of when I do business with somebody, and I want to take care of other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I going back to the fur boom. I'm a little bit older than you, but not much. But those were crazy times, and I remember opening day opening day would be in Indiana is November 15th, and typically you would start buying them the 16th of November, full swing. And in those 70s and 80s, there'd be 400 carcass rats sitting on the floor and all the coon and everything to go with it. And you'd be at the end. I mean, as a buyer, you're thinking, holy cow, we're buying a lot of stuff and be quite busy. And then you got to put it all up.
Yeah.
So, I had hired help at the time, just like Nelson hired you. But it was, those were, to think back on that was crazy. And, it was nothing to work 24 hours straight and never sleep. I mean, it was, I was much younger back then, and I could do that, and I didn't have quite as much sense. But on the other hand, you didn't have any choice because it had to be put up. Freezers would be full if you had freezers.
It was either put it up or lose it.
Exactly, and you paid big money for that stuff.
Yes, you couldn't have. We're talking back in 1977, 75, 76. A $25 raccoon. And for crying out loud, you could take your family to a nice steakhouse for $25.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you have $25 raccoon sitting on the floor.
That's a lot of steak.
Yeah, and you want to make sure you got it done.
Yeah.
The fur boom, of course, like you, I'm sure we didn't realize what it was at the time.
It's too young. It was too young.
But
to fully appreciate where we were at.
Exactly. And
yeah.
Man, I'm glad I got to participate in that.
Yeah.
You talk to people now that are, say, 40 years old, 35 years old,
Me.
and try to, like you, a young pup, you try to explain to them how much fur you actually did back then, and they look at you like you're lying. There's
Right.
no way you could have put that much fur up. I just don't know where it all came from.
It was amazing, and everybody trapped, or if you didn't trap, you knew a trapper.
Yes.
Unlike what we were talking with Jerry Ann. I mean, everyone was interested because the money was really good.
Yep.
And and I've said it before, it brought a lot of the bad stuff out. I mean, because of the money, there were a lot of things that went on that people shouldn't wouldn't have been very proud of.
It brought the bad element out.
Right.
Just when money's involved, it always brings out bad elements. But Charlie, I remember a guy one evening, probably I think it was 1977, and you'll know who I'm talking about. I saw him. Our hours, we always shut down at 8 o'clock. That didn't mean that we got out of there at 8 o'clock. We just closed to the public. About 8:15, the guy came walking through the door and went and talked to Nelson and went back out. Nelson told me to go help him, and we carried in 200 red fox.
Yeah.
That were all put up. Now, it's 1977. I think at that time he got about $115 nose count on 200 red fox. The guy made more money than his dad, my dad, and your dad put together that night in red fox. It was a great time to be in the fur trade.
It was crazy. It was, and the regret that I have is because I thought that it would go on for a long time. The regret that I had is I didn't take very many pictures.
Yes.
And I regret that to this day.
You have like 3 or 4 that I've found.
Hardly any. I mean, I was working out a little shed behind my parents' house at that time, and we would be buying so much fur. It would be stacked outside, and I was putting up fur in the garage, and it would be stacked full. It was crazy.
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
It was out where you could keep it from getting wet. But we had it stacked here and there, but like you said, I mean, we just kept going and kept going and kept going until we'd get caught up, and then the next day it'd start all over again. Had 4 guys on scraping boards, fleshing coon every day.
Yeah,
7
day
days
in,
a
day
week.
out. Yeah,
It's crazy.
I don't remember how many days that me and at least one other. Of course, I'd buy all day, or sell. We were selling trapping supplies too, and then we'd try to wind down 7, 8 o'clock as far as customers coming in, and then we'd just hit the beams and we'd scrape literally all night long. Maybe go to bed about 6 o'clock in the morning, and then hit 2 or 3 hours of sleep.
10 o'clock and doing it again.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, I mean, I just can't put numbers on how many raccoon we would handle a year. You would not believe me. But we were just one buyer. At that time period, there were buyers. There were 2 or 3 buyers in every county.
Right. That was the common.
Yes. I mean, the guy I worked for he was a big buyer. He bought quite a bit, and he did a lot of traveling, and he bought off of smaller buyers. But there were 10 other guys like that in Indiana too that were putting up just as much fur as he was. but they also had the markets out east in New Jersey and New York. I remember, we'd be in there just working like any other time, and the phone would ring, and he'd answer the phone, and he'd say, "Okay, stop what you're doing. Take the truck to the house and load up, 4,000 double X coon, and then go to Noblesville and get a U-Haul trailer and fill it with 3,000, 4,000 muskrats, and he'd take off. He'd be gone within an hour because he got the call that he had an order to fill, and he had to get it filled.
Yep.
And it was just unbelievable.
It was
crazy. I always hear stories. Everyone's telling me all the stories about the fur boom,
I feel very fortunate that I was part of the fur boom. I really do.
And, we had a little bit of a hint of it in 2013, a little bit. But it was, and the rumor was that, well, here's our next fur boom. Well, it didn't last long.
Yeah, it was just a little firecracker.
Right. And it fell apart about it as quickly as it started. But one thing about trappers and coon hunters too at that time, if there's good incentive, they're going to go out and catch some stuff.
Yep.
With that being said, the trappers that are going nowadays, I'm going to trap if it's free,
regardless.
But I just really enjoy it and I appreciate it, and I think generally speaking, the trappers that are out today, because the market is not good, are here to stay, and there's just part of what they do. And
trapping lifestyle.
Yeah,
it's a lifestyle for sure.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, going back to talking about the fur boom, and it was crazy. And I remember there was one guy, and this one sticks in my mind. There were others too, but this one really sticks in my mind. And he goes, he came in, he liked to coon hunt, and he was tired of every time he went to a woods, there was other coon hunters already there, and the trespassing was crazy, and the trap thieving was crazy. And anyways, the guy comes in, he's selling me some coon. He goes, "Oh, you'll be glad when these coons drop to $5 a piece."
Yep.
Well, it happened.
And then he wasn't glad.
And then he quit hunting.
Yep.
So I mean, when the fall of '87 things started to fall apart, and then the spring of '88 it really fell apart, and none of us fully realized how bad it was because it took several years to work through all that fur. Well, the fur that I bought that '87 to '88 season took me 6 years to get rid of. And of course, you're selling it for 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar by the time you get all said and done. I mean, that was.
And that's the one thing I'm noticing now. You see it on social media a lot. Guys, well, boy, this market can't get any worse, and I'm here to tell you it can. It can get a lot worse.
It can get worse.
It's not good, but it's not. I mean, I see it. I think I see it improving some. It's never going to be what it was in the 70s and 80s. I don't believe we'll ever see that again.
No, because the ranch people, the fur ranch people, particularly mink, and it wouldn't take a lot to get the fox going. I mean, they're producing huge numbers of skins, and they're big skins that are all matched alike. The color's all the same, so everything's in place. So if there's the least bit of increase in price, those guys, it doesn't take much for them. Within 12 to 24 months, they're increasing production. You know, so.
I mean, those ranch mink aren't Indiana coyotes. I mean, they're pretty easy to match up.
Right. They're all bred. It's amazing. Yeah. It is amazing. And you're talking a mink skin that's basically the size of a otter.
Yep.
It's maybe not as wide, but as long.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. It's crazy. But and people say, well, the fur business is dead. The fur business is alive and well because the world consumes around 80 million, and it might be more, ranch mink a year. 80 million skins.
Yeah.
So that, in the scheme of things, if there were on a fur boom year, we've got coon that maybe 1 million are caught if everybody is out after them. So 1 million raccoons, which we haven't produced that many in several years.
No.
In a season. But anyways, is nothing as compared to 80 million ranch mink.
Yes.
So, the ranch mink are just so much more efficient, and
the guy doesn't have the end user.
The manufacturer
is not. He doesn't have the labor cost involved with ranch fur that I mean, it all goes, somebody pays for it down the line, but with the ranch fur, there's not as much labor involved. There's not as much hands-on.
Right.
And
so you got, it's kind of a no-brainer for the manufacturer
Sure.
to use that.
If he can use that in his design, I mean, he's really got no other choice. He's a businessman. He's got to make money.
And it is based on fashion, but mink has always been in fashion.
Yes.
And I don't know that in comparison that we'll ever see wild mink do much in price. I mean, it would have to be some huge marketing thing that, ranch, wild mink, native, whatever.
Where they're having a mix match or something.
Yeah, it just sounds cool to buy wild.
Yes.
So.
Right.
And so far that isn't happening.
And, it's like you said, those days where I've worked hard and put up a lot of fur, and you go out there, and I go out there in my shed and I get to looking at that stuff. I'll just sit and look at it, maybe drink a cup of coffee and just ooh and ah over it, and pat myself on the back, which isn't hard to do because my back's usually bent over because I can't straighten up. But you wonder. I mean, I'm not going to put a number on how many coons I've probably held or worked with through my career, but it's up there. You look at a raccoon or a coyote or muskrats hanging on the boards, and you're thinking, I wonder if that raccoon is going to end up on a coat that some oil worker in Russia is wearing. You have to wonder where this stuff is ending.
It's cool to think about.
Yeah.
And raccoon, that's part of the reason we're not seeing much of a market is Russia really hasn't been actively buying like they had been several years ago. And that was a utilitarian use for those raccoons. I mean, it wasn't as fashion based as selling bobcats and that kind of thing.
It was a necessity type thing.
Right. It's cold in Russia and they need it. They need fur. So,
but I always wonder where a lot of this stuff ends up. I'm sure a lot of my coyotes, I don't think any of them have taken the walk down, a runway in New York City.
we're not. Our coyotes they're not from the right state.
No, but you wonder where that stuff ends up, what the end product looks like on it, and it makes me kind of proud because I'm part of it.
Yeah,
right.
And a lot of trappers will tell you the same thing when their fur shed's full and they like just going out there. Sitting, drinking a cup of coffee, whatever, and they just really hate to sell it. And selling fur is part of being a trapper. It's part of the fur industry. It's
just part of the process.
Right. But on the other hand, when your fur shed's full and it looks cool and you got all that hard work out there and you can remember what is behind each skin, in some cases what the story is or whatever, it's hard to get rid of. It's hard to get rid of.
It is hard.
It's a sad day after the sale.
I try and keep at least one animal to tan for myself each season.
Yeah.
But you hear stories of guys that it's a hard sell after you've put all that work into it, and a lot of guys get depressed, I guess. Start drinking. I don't know.
Well, it's when we were at one of the hearings last spring, the Bobcat hearings, and of course the Haneyes are just sitting there hammering us, and they say, well, you guys just do it for the money, or and it's like, which is ridiculous. Maybe during the 70s and 80s, a number of people did it for the money because clearly they didn't continue after the market crash.
Sure.
But what we have left now, we're not doing it for the money.
No,
the money is part of it because it is the fur industry, but certainly we're not trapping because of the money.
And that
definitely.
I thought we were going to have to fight our way out of that place, but what they don't know. That one lady, she kept jumping up. Well, I looked it up, and the average bobcat sells for $650. And I'm thinking, lady, this is Indiana. Our average bobcat's going to be lucky if it hits $35. They don't know. They don't realize. But it's like you said earlier, the money is part of it. And, of course, when prices get up, you always get those guys. They come into it for the money, but it's the joy of being outdoors.
Yeah.
I mean,
A lot of it's just hard to really explain.
yeah, I'm
why,
just
you
kind
know.
of hitting and missing it here because, again, I've never set a trap, but
But you're still connected big
Yeah.
time. It's funny. We say it all the time too, and I still doesn't sit with people, I guess. But no one's ever really paid me to go deer hunting or bass fishing.
Yep.
But trapping, at least I get a little bit for my gas. But
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then you know the line that gets me is guys come in and said, oh, I used to trap, and I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
just loved it. And when the prices fell off, and I haven't set a trap. Well, you didn't love it that much.
that's
Yeah.
right.
It's just bottom line is you may have enjoyed it when you were doing it because you were getting a check, but when it comes down, it's a lot of work. You got to go every day, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. Mud, plenty of mud this past year, plenty of rain and all that, but that, that's part of it, and that's why it's really difficult to fully put into words why we trap and what we do. But
I mean, like me, I putting up fur. I just love it. I mean, it's what I do. It means a lot to me, and as much as I hate to say it, and you never know it, I'm getting older. And the last 4 or 5 years, it's taken a toll on me. I mean, like yesterday, I think I scraped 30 coon yesterday, and I called Jerry Schilling about 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, Jerry, I figured out why I'm getting fat. he said, why? I said, because I'm not scraping enough raccoons. I can't do what I used to do, and that bothers me.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, it does. I mean, Terry Mann and I were talking Saturday. I said, I used to try to push for 100 scrape flesh and stretch 100 raccoon a day. I may go over, 110 or hit 90. But if I did much more than that, then I couldn't. I was hurting too much to do that much the next day.
Right.
But man, I tell you what, I don't want to try to do 100 coon right now.
Yeah.
I'm out of shape.
Well, I mean, even back in the day when we were younger, you first start out at the beginning of the season, you couldn't do near what you could do at the beginning that you could do towards the end of the season, or even just 2 weeks in. I mean, once you got acclimated to it, but we were way younger. We were 40 years younger then. So,
and that's one thing I noticed too, because I do a lot of demos. Trapper's Ed, I do our demo here, and I get invited to a couple other states to do demos. And when I first started doing them, I'd throw a raccoon on the board, boy, I'd have him whipped out in about 3 minutes, and
Nobody saw what you did.
Yeah, nobody saw it. I keep hearing people in the crowd saying, "Man, if I did that, I'd tear them all to heck," So then I realized when I hear that, you need to slow down so these people can see what you're doing. But for the average trapper or coon hunter that's starting out fleshing these coon hides, if they've only been doing it for 1 or 2 years, they've got 25 or 30 raccoon. Well, the first 10 they tear up pretty bad. It takes them 2 hours to do each one. And it's like I tell them, about the time you start figuring out what you have to do, you're done for the year.
Season's winding down, yeah.
And so then you start next year, and you basically have to start over. You're better than you were. So it takes them a little bit longer, but it's not rocket science, and anybody can do it.
No. It's a lot of it is just you got to develop the technique.
Yep.
So, and you got to get kind of a feel for it.
And I see on social media all the time. What's the best fleshing knife to get? Well, in my opinion, the best fleshing knife to get is the one you want.
Or the one you get used to.
Yep.
The one.
The one you start with is probably what you're going to end up being best at. And that's what I found with me working here doing.
They're
not
all
just
good
my
knives.
own hides, but hides for taxidermy as well.
We used to scrape a lot of coon with that basic $18 knife.
Yep.
I don't know how you did that.
I mean, it was we'd have a second one for the sharp for the neck area.
Oh,
But
okay.
that pushing blade, I mean, once you have the technique down, you could do it.
Haul through them. I was talking to Terry Saturday. It's like he said, back in the fur boom, thousands and thousands of raccoons were fleshed with a draw knife. If we had the technology and the knives and the equipment that we have today back then, boy, we'd have loved it.
Yeah. I mean, we had Sheffields back then. That's the big English, big Sheffield knives. But that knife is,
it's pretty heavy.
yeah, it takes some technique to get used to that.
I
And,
like the Sheffield knife, but it, like you said, it takes some technique, and it wore me out.
It can wear you out because it is a big knife.
Yeah, I like it when I'm hitting up something big like buffalo or
Yeah.
cows, just something stubborn like that. Somebody wants something tanned.
Well, I
But-
thought that's what Tommy was for.
Yeah, you should.
By the way, just to catch up here, Dennis mentioned Terry. We're talking about Terry Manley.
Oh yeah, we should probably be more clear. Who we're talking
Terry
about.
is been a buyer. I've known him for 40 some years. I've known him for a long time. Fur buyer and NAFA's largest receiving depot. So
I'm sure we'll have him on at some point.
yeah,
most likely.
Yeah, but he was a big receiver for NAFA. I'm not sure if he is today, but it wasn't very long ago, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and he was
Big.
consistently their largest fur collector. So and a lot of Terry Manley. He's from northern Indiana. He's been around forever. So, but that's who Dennis is referring to. So, but,
So we've kind of figured out. By the way, I should probably mention too, Dennis and Charlie and I were all part of the same local chapter here, Chapter 7B, and that's kind of where I started meeting up with you through here at Who's Your Trapper, and then
Yeah.
also being involved in 7B. You're the vice president. I forgot about
Well,
that.
you're the president.
Where's the title? Where's your name badge?
It's in my pickup.
So now everyone's kind of got the gist, sitting here with two big fur guys here.
Yeah. Okay.
Where, if you want some more work, Dennis, where are these people going to go? You got a website or you got Facebook? How do you?
I'm on Facebook. I don't have a website, and then you just have to call me.
Okay.
Google me. You Google
Dennis
me,
Cobb.
you'll find me.
now, do they go Poncho or
No, I'm lefty.
Lefty?
Yeah. Lefty was good with the knives. Poncho was just a pickpocket.
Hey, easy.
So, but no, and like I said, I'm slowing down. But if I can fit you in, I'll fit you in. If not, we'll find somebody to help you out.
The worst thing about where we're at now, market conditions, on some of that stuff equals about what the labor costs.
Right.
Yes.
So they're like raccoon, or it's tough.
Yeah, I had a customer in the shop yesterday that he brought me a bunch of product, and I finished it, and we ended up swapping fur for the labor. If he would have paid me straight up to put that fur up, he had a lot of raccoons, a few muskrats. He would have paid me more to put the fur up
Then his return on
than he would have sold the fur for.
he was in the negative.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard for people to justify using me. Like you said, back 2000, I think it was 12 and 13.
There was no problem then.
Yeah, I quit my job in December and stayed at home, fleshed hides all winter. I myself fleshed over 4,800 raccoons that year. I hired a boy to help me a little bit. He did a couple hundred, which I'm glad he did because that was 200 I didn't have to do. Plus the coyotes and beaver, 600 coyotes, probably 350 beaver, 1,600 muskrats. In the last 3 years combined, I haven't scraped 500 raccoon.
And that's just legit. I mean,
They're
that's
just not there. They're not there.
right.
And like you said, the people that are catching them just can't see to pay me. I charge right at $3 to flesh and stretch and dry a raccoon.
Does that change at all with the market, or is that just your set?
That's my set price.
Labor's labor.
Right,
That,
right.
So.
Yeah.
And guys call me and say, I can't justify paying you $3 on this raccoon when I'm going to be lucky to get $8 for it finished.
Yeah.
And I understand it's a
understand,
financial thing.
Yeah, as long as they understand too. I mean, your time is worth something.
Yes.
And,
And that's the thing. I had a lot of people say, when the prices dropped, well, you need to drop your prices. I said, well, why do I need to drop my prices? They said, well, the price of fur went down. I said, but the price of labor hasn't. If anything, the price of labor's gone up.
Right.
Come on, I need to eat. Look, I'm losing weight here. But it's been fun. I enjoy it. Like I said, there's nothing I enjoy more than putting up fur.
Yeah. So let's talk about numbers now. We just finished last weekend at the 7B sale.
Right. We
were all there. Yep. Fur Taker Chapter 7B.
It's a small chapter sale. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not one of the big state sales. It's not like
No.
Elizabethtown, Kentucky, or
No, but it's a good time hanging out with everybody. You see a lot of the same faces every year.
You see a lot of the same faces. Like you said, it's a small sale. I feel like it's getting bigger. I think we're getting more attendees, maybe not more fur.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm trying to think, how many lots did we have?
We had 22.
22 or 21? Okay, yeah.
Which
we had 22 lots, but that was 22 trappers.
yes.
So there was within that there might have been 60 lots because a guy would have.
Split them up.
Depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So.
But it's a good time, and it's pretty interesting. And the week before, we were down at the Boat Sport and Travel Show, and I was trying to get people just to come, whether they had fur or not. Just come watch.
It's in the scheme of things, we're used to it and been around it all our lives, but it's pretty unique in the scheme of things.
Right.
Most people don't even realize this kind of stuff goes on.
Well, Randy was down there. Randy Renner was down there. And I called him yesterday. I said, so what did you think of the sale? He goes, well, it took me a while to get figured out what's going on. He said, that's really something that I just never thought of. It's very interesting to see that much fur and as fast as it sells.
Yeah. I got to say we had a good number of buyers. I don't remember, we had 7 or 8 buyers, and probably 4 or 5 of them were pretty active.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got a great auctioneer who didn't really know fur when he first started with us 3 or 4 years ago, but he's an auctioneer's auctioneer because he figures it out really quick.
He figured it out that first year, and he knows how to go after it now.
And he keeps it moving, and I think he works those guys for as much as they can pay.
Yeah.
And
I talked to him on and off throughout the year, and a guy coming into this not knowing much about it at all, he was all excited to come. He's like, yeah, I can't wait to see what's going on. I've been kind of paying attention a little bit to the market and stuff, and he heard that coyotes were selling pretty decent, so he was excited. And so that's neat.
His history was that, of course, like his dad was a coon hunter, and he's like my age, so going back to when he was a kid, he did trap during the fur boom years. So,
did he?
Yeah. So he had that connection from years and years ago.
It's always there. It's what you said earlier. We knew somebody that was associated with it somewhere down the line.
If you didn't trap, you knew somebody that did. I mean, that's how big it was at that time. So.
But the buyers, and I sure do appreciate the buyers showing up. It means a lot because this is a moneymaker for our chapter. It doesn't make a lot of money, but we could use the money. And
it provides a market for these guys.
Yep.
Yeah,
since we don't
have
a fur buyer in every county now.
Yep.
So
and that's the thing I like, especially, which I didn't see any this year, but in years past, we've had 12-year-old kids. Their mom brings them to the fur sale, and they've got 2 raccoons and 3 muskrats and a possum.
Yeah.
And they're just tickled to death, and they're walking around on cloud 9. And if we didn't have this sale, because there are very few country buyers anymore, these kids wouldn't have any outlet for their fur.
Right.
And so what are they going to do? They're just going to get disappointed and stop.
Mm-hmm.
and I really like seeing the young kids come in the door with fur. And
Right.
usually the fur buyer, the buyers that we have there at the auction, they probably pay more than some of the stuff's worth just to give the kid encouragement.
Right.
Certainly on the $5 possums,
Yes.
which happened on Saturday. So,
Yeah.
and just to reference this, if anybody's listening to this, 3 years from now, we're talking March 1st, 2019. That's when the sale was. Just to give you a reference point, and we're talking central Indiana, and as far as the sale, and we're talking fur basically from the state of Indiana. So, we don't have a western type coyote, but thank goodness for the coyote market, because that was certainly the highlight of the sale. The Indiana coyotes
Are good.
I mean, the worst one was $1, but the high was $62.50. And who would have ever thought we'd see a $62.50 coyote in Indiana a few years ago? So.
Yeah, especially at our little sale.
Right.
I got the paper right here. It says we averaged $23.74 and ran 121 coyotes through that sale.
Right, that's what sold, and then in almost all the coyotes sold. I think there was maybe a half a dozen that guys weren't happy with the price and they pulled them. But
yeah, that's not. I really figured we had more coyotes than that, but.
They take they're such a big skin, and they take up so much room that you think that so. But I
mean, it was active. We'd always like to have more fur there, but for the market and the conditions right now, I thought we did really well.
I think too. We of course the North American Fur Auction sale was 3 days. It was on Thursday that they sold the majority of the wild fur at NAFA. Or offered the majority of the wild fur. They sold 100% on coyotes up there, with strongly advancing prices over the previous year, which really fell in line with the eastern coyotes. So
I was pleased.
Yeah, Justin did very well on that sale.
Yeah,
I had my personal best. I sold a coyote for $118, and I had one or two in the $70 range. I averaged 40 on the ones I sent up there, and then I had a low of a $9 or $10 one there too.
I think you had one $9 one and two $10 ones or something.
I think that's right.
But I'll be honest with you, on the 3 coyotes that brought the 9 and the 2 for 10, those were coyotes.
They weren't even. Second look, shouldn't even skinned them.
Shouldn't have skinned them, but they did. But they ended up bringing decent for what they were. Those were the coyotes that typically bring $1 or $1.50 at NAFA.
And you're looking at a $40 average on eastern coyotes out of Indiana.
Yeah, I was blown away.
Pretty good average.
Yeah,
I was thinking 20 to 25. I was going to be proud, with that.
And like I said, just think if you'd have had a professional fur handler put them up for you.
Hey, I do pretty good. I can handle my own.
You've been watching me do demos. I
can't.
see you.
I couldn't do what you do. Take other people's fur, pit it up. Now I do it here at the shop, but it's different. It's a tanning process. It's handled totally different than the put up that you would do for the market. So that's one thing. But for you to pit up something and they want it pristine, and that would it doesn't make it fun for me because I'd be more nervous about messing up. Now when I handle my own, it's like, darn it, I put a hole in that coon. And move on to the next one. It's not the end of the world. It happens, but yeah, in your seat, I don't think I would like it as much.
I got to admit that since I built the fur shed at home and I'm not here trying to do fur handling in the shop, I enjoy it a lot more.
And you probably
enjoy it a lot more doing it and go out there in the evenings and
probably do a little bit better job because you're able to relax. You're not here in this atmosphere.
Exactly. I'm not getting interrupted.
Yeah.
Not with 10 different things while I'm trying to put up a couple raccoons.
Now, the one thing I've noticed, too, over the years, and I'm not going to take credit for it, I think 7B as a whole needs to take credit for it, the fur handling that's been coming into our sale. I think we're seeing better fur handling, and we're seeing more people do it. And that's the one thing I like about being a 7B is we're teaching people.
Yeah.
Right. And some of that, though, I kind of wonder is if we had a spike like we had 5 years ago, then we would also have a spike in mishandled fur because those guys jumping in because they think they're going to get.
Yeah.
So the guys that are left are the guys that are pretty serious about what's going on, and they're going to do a good job with their fur.
And then again, they're not hitting it as hard as they usually would either.
No.
So if they were hitting it that hard, maybe theirs wouldn't be up to par.
But I think generally though that you're correct that these guys have learned to do a good job with their fur, and you will get. I put a picture of some really well handled possums on Instagram, and
that guy's nuts. You know how long it took him to do them? I'm telling you, I don't do possums.
They were anyways. These possums were beautiful. This guy did. He board stretched them. They were, and he only did nice possums, and so they were.
They were nice possums.
So when you put fur up to the best that they can be put up, in other words, over and above the standard, then you will get the benefit of the doubt. You will get as much as that fur can possibly bring in whatever scenario that you're marketing in, whether it be the country buyer, the trapper fur sale that we're talking about that we had on Saturday, or shipping it to North American Fur Auctions. If you are doing an exceptionally pristine job putting your fur up, you will realize a better.
It will be noticed.
It will be noticed, and you will get the benefit of the doubt. If something's marginal on the decision making on where it goes, because fur handling is not. I mean, fur grading has a lot of very technical guidelines, but it still comes down to somebody making a judgment call between two different grades. And if it's very well handled, I'm talking about on the marginal ones. If it's very well handled, then it's likely to go up.
They'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah,
they don't have the worry that it hasn't been put up properly.
Right.
With that being said, though, I also see a lot of fur that can be taken care of better.
Certainly. Certainly.
That one coyote that was up on the table, it was a nice coyote, and the buyer grabbed it and popped it, and my gosh, a cloud of dust came blowing out of it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you spent the time to catch this animal, skin it, put it up, and the put up was good on it. Take the time to clean it.
It's kind of like you got to respect the resource.
That's right. I mean that animal lost its life for a purpose, and to me it's a respect thing. You have to take care of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when he flipped that thing, and man, it looked like Pigpen was walking through there. Man, the cloud of dust was following it for a while.
It's so important, and it's one thing if people are getting started and they just don't know.
They don't know.
But once they know, and someone tells them,
Yeah.
or they see it at a trapper's ed, like we talk about it here when you do your demo and stuff, and that's when it kind of bothers me. It's like if you know better, you spend all that time doing all that work. I mean, might as well just finish it out.
With something that's not put on a fur stretcher symmetrically, or that one drives me crazy because
it's an extra 15 seconds.
If that. Whether it's on crooked or straight, in fact, it's more difficult to put it on crooked because it doesn't line up right when you hook your hooks in at the bottom. If you're using wire.
And that's the one thing I've noticed too, and I'm going to tell you now, and I've told people for years, if you have questions, you have problems, I've handed out over 5,000 cards throughout the years. If you don't have one of my business cards, Google me, get my phone number and call me.
Yeah.
If you have problems, you're more than welcome to come spend an afternoon with me, and I will. I don't know everything, but I'll show you what I know.
Well,
and if I don't have an answer to your question, I'll find somebody that does know the answer to your question. I remember 7 or 8 years ago being at a sale at Salem, and a young man, his dad brought him in. This kid was probably 11 years old, and he had the worst put-up raccoon, a couple of the worst possums I'd ever seen in my life, and a couple of muskrats. But he was proud as punch. And I gave him a card, and I kept running into him at conventions. I think the convention was in Columbus that year. I ran into him there and talked to him. And 4 years ago, 2013-12, he called me. He said, I'm having trouble. He said, I'm having trouble putting up. I'm cutting holes and stuff. And he said, can I come up? And they lived almost 3 hours from me. So I made arrangements for him to come up on a Sunday. And he brought his fleshing beam, brought his knife, and brought some of his hides. And within 45 minutes, I pretty much had figured out what he was doing wrong. And, man, he whipped out that beaver and just pretty quick. And
The rest is history.
Yeah.
He's putting up something good.
And the next year, I was at the Salem sale, and he had a handful of fur in there, and it was excellent, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you don't know, there's nothing wrong with not knowing. But you have the resources to get help, and don't be afraid to ask for it.
Right. That's the same here for we're a NAFA receiving agent, so guys bring their fur in that they're not typically, they're learning or whatever, and they'll bring it in and they'll want us to go through it, and say, critique me. And we'll tell them, and sometimes it's such a good job that we're splitting hairs,
Yeah.
But in general, we can normally give them some pointers and get them, even better for the following year. So.
And like you try, I mean, I do these Trapper's Ed things, and like the demo here, and a couple others, I learn things from people in the audience.
Exactly.
I mean, they bring up something, and I'm sitting there going, I never thought of that. But, don't think you can't learn something from everybody.
Right.
We don't know it all, but, boy, we'll sure help you out as much as we can.
We do have a 40-some-year perspective on it, though.
Yeah.
I got a good question for you guys.
What's that?
Since you guys have hit so much up.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have my personal favorite and reasons why, but wood or wire stretchers?
I hate you.
Which one and why? Let's hear it, Dennis.
Okay. I'm in production.
Yep.
So I use a lot of wire. Wood looks nice. Well, I'm not going to say that it doesn't. But I get paid by the piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to use wire. I can put a coon on wire faster than I can on a board. Because I take so much pride in what I do, it takes me forever to put them on the board because I want them to look good. Now, with that being said, I think it was 2009, 2010, my brother is a trapper. Let me go back just a little bit. You see on social media and on the computer, when I switched over to wood, my average went up 35%. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, did the price of coon go up? In that between that time period. Or because I just can't imagine that you're getting that much more for wood. It does look better. So the next year, my brother, he brought every raccoon he caught to my house, and I skinned them and put them up. And we didn't cherry pick anything. I mean, I skinned them as soon as they got there. I'd put one on wire, one on wood. So we had the whole season spread out there during the different time periods of the prime.
Mm-hmm.
Shipped them to NAFA on under two different accounts. One was wire, one was wood. The wood brought more than the wire. It brought $1 more. The one thing like I said, wire to me is faster, but I like the looks of a coon on wire. The fur in the window pops out. As it's drying, it's popping through the window. But wood does look nice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I have wire, I have wood. It's up to the customer. If the customer wants me to put it on wood, I'll put it on wood. But it's going to cost him 75 cents more. Just because it takes me longer.
Right.
There's no big production fur buyers, though, that use any wood at all.
And I understand why.
Except for mink, maybe, and otter. But as far as big production fur buyers that handle a lot of fur, they're using wire on everything, but maybe those two exceptions.
So what about maybe on a personal level?
On
your catch?
Me personally, I'm using wire on my coyotes. We have a really big coyote here. I'm using wire. It just gives me more flexibility. It's quick. I'm not concerned about gaining size using a board stretch. The edges are probably a little more creased than some guys would say that with the wood that you got a more of a rounded edge. Quite frankly, once you get him coned down and everything, you really can't
don't
tell.
see it.
I can't tell. I do like putting my coon on wood just because I like messing with them once I got them on there to look.
You can polish them up.
Yeah, they look pretty nice. So, anyways, so I do use wood on those, and to be honest, on the foxes, we don't catch a lot of foxes. But if we go down south, we got all the gray foxes. I've been sending those and getting them tanned and selling them tanned because the fox market's not been good at all. So, and muskrats, I always put them on wire. They go quick. I don't think to be honest, I'm one of the rare ones, I guess, and it's because over the years of handling so many rats during the fur boom years, I think I personally, and guys will disagree with me, and that's fine, but I personally think a muskrat looks better on wire than it does on a board.
Me too. I don't know why, but
it's because of the thickness of them, and we always stacked them in stacks of 10s and stacks of 100.
Yeah, so, try to stack 100 muskrats that came off a board.
You can't do it.
You can't stack 5 of them.
No, because they're too thick, and then they bend down or whatever. They don't support. So, I honestly believe that muskrat stretched on wire is the way to go. And like Dennis said, if you put a fur on wood, it doesn't mat it, but it pushes that fur down. So then you have to comb it back up to get it to pop up. So with wire, you don't have that issue. So
yeah, as that coon's drying on that board, it's shrinking. Well, you've got the compression, you've got pressure. It's pushing that fur against that board, and everybody said, "Well, all you got to do is comb it out." Well, but I think you're kind of giving it a memory. It's compressed there, but then again, you throw 75 of them in an AFA-sack, and it bounces on in the truck coming up here, and then they get piled up, and it gets thrown on a semi, and then it goes to Wisconsin. What's it going to look like when it gets there?
I still think if it's combed up or put on wire, that does pop better.
I think it pops better on wire
for the guy that does put it on wood and doesn't comb it up. So I think.
And like you said about your coyotes, I had a fur buyer in there 5-6 years ago, and he was bragging about the coyotes look so much better on wood. At that time, I was doing a large order of coyotes. I think the guy had 125 of them. And I have wire, which I like putting my coyotes on wire. And I also have some adjustable woods. And I think at that time I had 75 or 80 done on hangers. And he's saying, "Oh, they look so much better on wood." And I said, "Well, show me which ones I did on wood and which ones I did on wire." And he figured it out, but it took him about 10 minutes. I have learned how to mess with them on the wire to dress them up.
And and the bottom line with wire stretchers is that they got to be clean with no rust.
They have to be clean.
That's the bottom line. And other than that, so this sticks in my mind talking about particularly on muskrats, wood versus wire, years and years ago when I was still buying. So this would have been this particular instance was probably late 70s, early 80s. Rats were high. I mean, like $7-8 for when we're talking a long time ago. And a guy and I had bought. I had about 5,000 rats ready to go sell. And I had bought an old guy, kind of an old river rat guy. He was probably in his 70s. He came from southern Indiana. He came up and I bought his muskrats, and he board stretched all of them. So this is kind of an old time board stretch. So, the top was flat, and there was probably but they were giant rats because he caught them on the river. That was back in the days when we had river muskrats on the river, and he trapped the river. So I think he caught about 200 of them. Well, when they graded those 5,000 muskrats, they pulled those, whatever it was, close to 200 rats out of it. They did not like them because when he put them on the stretcher, essentially it overstretched them and it made the fur too thin. So they did not grade as well, and they didn't appreciate those board dried or board stretched muskrats in there just because they were just basically overstretched, and as you said, that shrinks, and then the fur, so it's kind of like when you put a beaver on a board, which I board stretch all my beavers. I with
No, I think definitely on beaver, I like them on board.
Yeah, me too. So, and then the thing with those is I always stretch them loose. I don't want to pull them tight because we don't have a heavy beaver here anyways. So if they shrink a little bit, it's going to make that fur look a little bit fuller versus the guy that's cranking them as far out as he can. In addition to then you dry them in a little heat and then the things start breaking around the edge too, but on the skin. But
that brings up a good point, because I use both boards and hoops. Because I'm so limited on space, I can put the hoops, I can hang them, and but I've been to these fur sales, and you see these guys. You can actually look at beaver that have been stretched on boards, and you can actually see where a guy it's got the imprint of a pair of pliers on the side of it, where he's grabbing it with pliers and pulling it so he can get it as tight as he can. And I'm like you, I would rather when I get my beaver stretched on a board, it's loose.
Yeah, if it's a little sagging or whatever, it's fine.
It will dry tight.
Because it'll dry tight. And like you said, when you pull them that tight and nail them down, you're thinning out the leather and thinning out the fur. And you're not going to fool the graders. It's not going to happen.
You're just hurting yourself.
Yep. Same way with raccoons. You can see the plier marks in raccoons where guys are pulling them down to staple them on the boards, and it's like, you're actually probably doing yourself more harm if you just take it up into the lower size.
Right. So it's the raccoons that get stretched like as wide as a mink would be and all that crazy stuff. It's like
I noticed that at the sale last week, and I'm not cutting anybody down. I'm really not, because guys they're putting up their fur, they're doing the best they can. And a lot of guys think, well, I can make my own board. So to me, you're better coming up here and buying 2 or 3 boards, because a guy may have one raccoon. I measured one raccoon; it was 10 inches wide, but it only stretched. It only measured large. Excuse me. But if he'd have stretched it on a 7.5 inch board, it probably would have been a 2X.
That's the other thing on those wire stretches. You've got to crease the top.
Yep.
You can't let them come out. You don't use them out of the box.
Nobody makes good wire stretchers anymore.
You're right.
They don't.
They're not like they used to be.
Nope. Those Peerless Chain Company used to make stretchers, and I've got 500 of them, and I love them.
There was a guy out of Ohio, Ron Nacina. Some of you from back in the day will remember that name, but he actually made a wire stretcher, and it was a black spring steel stretcher.
Yep.
And that was actually my favorite stretcher. I mean, that's an excellent stretcher. The hooks held well. They didn't want to slide up. The shape was good. It was just a really nice stretcher. And of course, he went out of business, and those were no longer made. But,
yeah.
But that's right up there with that Peerless stretcher. And personally, I preferred it over the Peerless, but that was what I was used to using. So.
I called Peerless 4 years ago and said, "Man, do you guys have any in the warehouse someplace, stacked back in a corner that you've forgotten somewhere?" The guy said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "What's the chances of you starting to build those again?" He said, "No, it's not going to happen." And that's the thing. There you go, right there. That's another thing I want to bring up. Back to just like, what's the best fleshing knife? You just heard that Charlie had a particular stretcher that he liked using. I have a particular stretcher I like using. There's nothing wrong. I mean, pick what you like and go with it.
As long as it's meeting the standards of how you're selling it.
As long as you're getting the job done. Pick what you like and go with it.
Right.
There's back to the fleshing knife thing. There's 20 or 30, 40 different fleshing knives. They're all good knives, and 90% of them are good knives. Find one you like and stick with it.
The one you get used to. I remember I was in the middle of fur season and I was scraping a lot of coon, and I literally broke the handle off the metal. And I pick up another knife, and I just can't get it. And
nope.
and you just like, oh, my gosh. So I actually went, neighbor over here welded the handle back on for me and got me going because it had the same – because the other ones, even though it was the same knife, same brand, it didn't have the same feel to it. So and then it got me back in business. But that was just to give you an idea how
attached.
Yeah, or how specific knife is fits your hand the best or whatever, you know. So
I
what
believe
you're
it was
used to.
2007. It may have been longer than that. I was just getting started. I didn't have a lot of business yet, and boy, I was looking for business. And I saw on the computer where a guy in Wisconsin, it was right before Thanksgiving, he had a bunch of coon that he'd fleshed. So I got a hold of him and worked out a deal on price and everything. And he said, just come on up. We got the knives and we got the fleshing beams and stuff. And I said, oh, no. I'm bringing my beam and I'm bringing my knife. Because you get used to using that stuff.
Exactly.
And without it, I'd have been lost. So I go up there and I scrape coon for him. But I can't I can get the job done. But if you're doing very many, I leave my stuff alone. Don't you use my scraping knife.
I was going to ask you if I could borrow it.
And the answer would be no.
Going back to the sale, I think we had the disadvantage and advantage of having the NAFA Wild Fur Sale prior to our sale on Saturday, our local sale. So I think the coyotes clearly brought more money because the NAFA sale was so strong.
Everyone got excited,
and they, and if you just as an observer, I wasn't buying. I haven't bought since 1991, but if you took a look at the NAFA breakdown, I took a look at what Justin had, what he had shipped, that kind of thing. The coyotes that were bought on Saturday, even though the price was quite good, I think those buyers will make money. A lot of times at sales, buyers will their egos get in the road, or they want to buy over their competitor or whatever. Sometimes they're not. They don't. Anyways, I think they bought them right, even though they paid a lot for them. So I think the buyers are going to do okay, and I think the trappers did very well. And clearly, we won't know that until the May sale for NAFA, because most of that stuff's going to get shipped to NAFA, I think. But on the downside of it was that we had sold muskrat and mink at the NAFA sale, and everybody thought that they would do, I think, better than they did on the sale. So our muskrat and
let me look here.
Coon prices were definitely reflected. That
muskrats, we averaged 278.
Yeah, I will say that we didn't have a lot of muskrats there. Less than 100.
There's 81. The high was $4. And the low was 50 cents.
Right. So, and they were not.
They weren't pristine muskrat.
No.
I mean,
Indiana is generally, we've got a pretty nice muskrat here.
Yes.
So, but those didn't represent Indiana muskrats right there. Between the handling and time of year, they were fall muskrats. They weren't caught late.
So what was it at the NAFA sale roughly?
I think it was $3 and $3.69. Just a second.
I believe it was
$3.69 average.
$3.59.
$3.59.
They sold 98% of the fresh trapper goods would be the stuff that wouldn't have limits or anything on it. So evidently they're saying they sold 98% of that, $3.59 average. So that was
well, at least they're moving them.
Well,
they're moving some of them, yeah. And then the raccoon on they're on the fresh trapper goods. They sold about 75% is what they're saying. And the chain was about 683 on the eastern north central, and then the western north central are 1066. And sometimes you can say we are going to be primarily eastern north central, but some of ours will, with the nice silver flanks, will sometimes go as a western. So, if somebody from Indiana, a really nice set of coons, say from a color area, say Lafayette or up that way, then maybe they might be pushing $9-10 on their average. But if they were a little bit selective on what they put up, so
right.
But I think that was an instance where the NAFA sale put a damper on the muskrat and the.
That's the one thing about having the NAFA sale right there with our sale. Some years it's really helped us,
yeah,
because we're the last sale in Indiana, and sometimes if the NAFA sale goes real good,
which is clearly evident on the coyotes.
Yeah,
right.
we do great at our sale. And some years when you're expecting, I think people were expecting muskrats to be a little bit more than they are now, than they were. It dropped. I mean, we had some no-sale muskrats, but we didn't have that many muskrats there. Sometimes the NAFA sale, being that close, helps. Sometimes it hinders. But
Right.
that's just
Yeah.
the way it is.
And a lot of times it's just by species too.
Yes.
So and I think the beaver pretty much what the beavers are worth. I don't think anybody made any money on beavers.
I don't think anybody's made any money on beaver in the last 5 years.
There was only 15 there that we ran through.
And they average like $9.
$9, yep. High of 13, low 4.
So if you shipped them to NAFA, you can probably figure about a $10 hatter average.
That's
beaver.
where you're at.
Now, on these numbers, you got a little bit of the green fur mixed in here, too.
This is
but no.
right. That's green
Yeah.
and put up. Now,
Okay.
we didn't have a lot of green fur there, but we did have
So
some.
that's kind of not much, but
Yeah.
just a hair difference.
And then the other thing on the auction was the otters did quite well, better than the market, because the otters on the NAFA sale were primarily withdrawn. There just wasn't interest in them, so that might develop later. But the average on the otters was what, Justin?
45.63. The high was 50 and the low was 40.
Yeah, so
And-
that there was only 8 or 9 of them there. but
8 of them,
but-
but they were well handled. They were put up.
Yeah, they were
nice. Beautiful.
They were
Yeah.
nice put up otter.
Yeah.
So, and the one thing too at our sales, and this has been kind of the case the past 3 or 4 years, is we have had people that are not really fur buyers, but they buy a fur buyer's license because they want to get stuff tanned.
Right.
So that has definitely helped out on red fox, gray fox, otters.
Tell them how much the one skunk went for.
We
skunk.
had one skunk for $12.50.
And that was clearly a tanning market.
Yep.
And on the NAFA auction, on the red fox and the gray fox they listed as mainly withdrawn, which means very little interest to no interest. And the red fox was selective demand, so they didn't really list any pricing, which means they didn't sell hardly
very
any
many.
of them. So,
But in this case, for us, at the 7B sale, they were able to move them, the reds were averaging 18 and the grays 17.
Pretty good
So,
money.
Yeah.
and that was clearly because those guys had shown up and they want to have that stuff tanned.
Because of that craft market. You know, that's what's, if we didn't have those buyers there, we wouldn't have as good of numbers as we do.
In the scheme of things, unfortunately, those guys can't absorb national level quantities. But
No.
for a local sale and a small chapter sale, they're perfect for us.
Yep.
So
I talked to one, and this is kind of one good example as far as NAFA before our sale, how it kind of hurt this individual. I won't say his name because I don't know if he wants,
right.
want people to know or not. But he probably doesn't care. But so the coon he was at a earlier sale up in Kalamazoo, and he was averaging $11 or $12 on the coons he took up there. Pretty good. I mean, granted, they were nicely put up coons.
With the Indiana coon.
Yep.
Yep, board stretched, looked real nice. And when he went up to the table, he didn't like he pulled a lot of his coons because he didn't like the numbers that were shown, because we only averaged, at our sale, $2.81 for the coon. High was $8, and of course the low was a quarter, but there was just a little over 400 of them that went through the sale.
That's the 400 that actually sold.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, that's sold, not run through, but 405 of them. And that average at 281 there versus what he was getting a week or two ago at 11, he didn't like that.
Yeah.
And when the NAFA sale hit, that just put things in more perspective
right.
for those guys buying. So he got ahead of the curve when he's,
Yep. He should have taken $11 and gone down and bought the buyer a roller dog down at Speedway. I mean, and it's a crapshoot.
The thing about that 281 on the coon, that was actually, in my view, the buyers overreacted to the NAFA sale.
Yes.
Because the coon were still worth more than 281.
right.
But
And-
there again, that's green
I was
and
going to say a
finished.
little bit of green. I didn't send a lot to NAFA as far as coons. It was just accidental catches into my coyote sets, and I caught a few in the backyard to keep the chickens safe, basically. So, but I averaged a little over $6, I think, for the few that I sent up there. And
but see, that's where and NAFA's been telling us this for the last 3 or 4 years. Be selective in what you harvest.
Wait to start trapping.
Yep.
When the stuff is fully prime.
And that's the thing. I know everybody gets excited when season comes in. They want to get going. Used to be November 8th coon hunters came in, and November 15th trapping came in.
Now both of them come in on November 8th.
Yeah, and I wish they'd have moved it to where the coon hunters come in November the 15th. That week, and I think you'll agree with me, Charlie, that week, that's those 7 days in that period, you can see a big difference in the primeness of the fur.
Right. I think probably partly the state's perspective on that was they felt that
get it open
and get the coons caught because they know that we need as many raccoons caught as possible in the state. So it wasn't really more of a economic primeness deal. It was more like we need a bunch of coons.
But caught. You can see that just that the difference in that 7 days.
It makes a huge difference.
Makes a big difference,
and it makes a big difference between here in central Indiana and Fort Wayne. I mean, or here in Indiana, central Indiana and Evansville. So
I've kind of got the state broke down in three areas. The coon you catch, say, from Peru, Wabash, north, is a lot better coon than the coon we have from Wabash to, say, Columbus. And then from Columbus south, I think we have another variety, another type of coon.
Almost like a coat coon.
Yep.
A little bit lighter.
What was that, Charlie? You told me a story once. There was back when you were buying, there was this select county that had really nice silver flaked coons.
Well, a lot of times you see those up around Lafayette, sometimes around Greensburg. I don't know if that's held up in Greensburg as well. But when I was buying and I'd run a route, and I got in one area. I'm not going to say where it's at, but I got in one area.
Everybody be out there.
Yeah, well, I got in one area, and every time I went down there, I went down. I think during the peak part of the season, I would go down once a week. I didn't go every other week, but I think I went once a week. And I bought a lot of fur down there, a lot of muskrats and a lot of. And you can hear me say down there, so you know it was in the south. And I bought, but there was a lot of fur there to buy. And of course, this was fur boom year. So, but anyways, those coon were a woolly, yellow-looking coon, and they actually hurt my overall average on the coons that I had here because I was buying quite a few down there. So, I mean, it wasn't anything for me to go down there and buy 150 green coon on an evening. So, but anyways, so I actually quit that stop.
Just the genetics of that area.
The coons were just not good. So, it hurt my overall average of my coons.
And you're in business to make money.
You got to make a fair wage, and you got to make a fair profit. So, it's So anyways, I did not continue to buy in that area. Of course, I passed up on the mink and the muskrats that I was and the fox.
Yeah.
But those coon was what I was primarily buying in terms of big numbers, and I just.
Well, I mean, let's face it, Indiana coon is king. I mean,
it basically here is in the whole Midwest.
Yes.
It used to be muskrats.
Yes.
And raccoons, and now because of the decline in muskrat numbers, it's raccoons.
Yep.
So. We don't have a coon market. Nobody's really making much money.
No, but go get the coyotes, guys.
Yep.
I mean, next year. Don't be doing it now.
The thing about, we were talking earlier about, we're going to trap regardless. The guys, the true trappers.
The guys that are trapping now are going to trap.
But at the same time, I will say, at least for me, I would target a different species, or we obviously went a little harder on coyotes than I didn't set near as many sets in the creeks for coon, knowing that the market wasn't as hot. But that doesn't mean I didn't go a little bit.
Sure.
I just didn't hit it as hard. But always going to go.
There's a market for coon. There's a market for the good coon. You just have to be selective. I mean, here I'm saying we have a market for our 2X, 3X, 4X coon, and we do. Is it the market that we had 5 or 6 years ago? No, but it's still not a bad market. A guy can make money on those coon.
They'll move through the pipeline.
They'll go.
But if on those smaller coons or whatever, just turn them loose.
Yep. If you're going to ship 150 extra large and large coon to the auction, you're going to be selling them over the next 5 years.
See, in auction terms, large and extra large sounds bigger than they are. A large coon is 24 inches, and an XL is 27 inches. So if we're not talking 2X and larger, which is like 29-inch coon, and then 30, I got to look at the sheet. 32, I think it is, and 34 on the triples, doubles, triples, quadruple sizes. You need at least that 2X size coon really to be talking about a marketable coon.
Yes.
It used to be 27 inches and above, you're in pretty good shape. But nowadays, it needs to be 2X and above.
Yep,
So,
let him go.
What was that? I can't remember. What was that? Did you remember my high on the coon on that last sale?
I
It was
don't.
$8. I think it was $8, but it was
no, it was 10. I'm sorry, it was 10,
10.
but it was a 2XL select.
yeah,
And it brought
was
$10.
a select $10. I was like, man,
And in 2013,
I
that
was
coon
gonna
would have
say-
probably brought 35 or 40.
Yes.
right?
So,
I mean,
but you kind of got to forget that stuff from the past, and you
Oh,
just
yeah,
you
'cause
got to appreciate it when it happens. But then you got to, because the next year it's a different story. I mean, it's not.
it is what it is. Those days are gone.
Yeah, coyotes might not be hot next year.
They may not.
They probably will be, but
That's what I'm guessing too. This whole parka,
Canada Goose.
that fashion trend going on right now. Those are. Hey, I need one of those.
Yeah.
They look nice.
They do.
I think they were
really
running
do.
the jacket or the coat is like $1,500 retail.
Yeah.
But they look pretty sharp.
I mean, you're talking goose down with a coyote collar, so pretty awesome.
I'm just letting you know, Charlie. Christmas bonus. If you want to get me one of those parkas, I'll be willing to wear it.
You got to work to get a bonus.
Just letting you know, Justin, it ain't happening. So.
I tried.
This is a side note. If anybody wants to listen to some other type of podcast, you might pull up the PETA podcast on Canada Goose.
Oh man, that was rough.
I'll bet that's good.
That is rough. So I'll just throw that out there. We won't talk any more about that. But,
What else did we have on that sale that we got possum numbers on here that we didn't say,
Well,
and the
like I said,
mink. We didn't mention the mink numbers.
You know what? The mink did well, and that's about where there's. But I thought they did well.
About 750
and
average.
there was 8 or 9 of those were on carcass. One guy had a bunch
Oh,
of
really?
on carcass.
So that mixed in there.
Yeah, he had 10.
There was 20 sold.
Yeah. He had 10 carcass. They were frozen males. They were nice big mink.
I actually don't think it hurt him too much not having them put up.
I don't
Really?
believe it did.
Well, sometimes, that's one other thing, too, that's great about these local sales. If you're not too sure about your handling yet, you should probably practice with the stuff that doesn't look as nice. And then when you got a big buck mink or something like that,
Yeah,
either take it to somebody like Dennis or sell it up there
Don't practice
on the carcass.
your good quality fur.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say that the green fur that was at that sale was actually fairly well taken care of for green fur.
I was very impressed with that.
Most of it was combed out. It wasn't wet. It wasn't muddy. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was all pretty darn
Clean.
nice stuff. So, and looking at the guys that brought it, they were actually one of them in particular was normally somebody that actually puts it all up.
Yeah, I handed him a business card. He said, "Well, I usually do it." And I said, "But that's why I'm giving you a card because I know you usually do it." And apparently, you didn't have time. He said, "No, I didn't."
So,
But he also knows the economics of the program.
right. So, but anyways, the green fur was pretty well taken care
Well
of.
taken care of.
Looked like the high on that mink was $1,250.
Yeah, it was a pretty. I remember the mink. It was a pretty nice put up male.
And looking at the wild mink on the NAFA sale, they only sold 35% of them. So,
Oh, really?
So they didn't sell very many of them, and the average was $907, and the top price was $17 on a wild.
So you
mink.
can't. I mean, if you were the individual selling that carcass mink, you can't be. Man, that's great.
Yeah,
Right.
Considering
Yeah.
what the market's doing.
And in Indiana, we actually have a pretty nice mink right here.
Well, we do.
It's in the scheme of things, Indiana got a nice mink. We're not particularly known for our raccoon, and our red foxes are small, but the color is good. Our gray foxes are good if we had any.
If we had any.
And our muskrats are pretty decent in the scheme of things, and our coyotes are not a western coyote for sure. So we've got some things that are very right in there on the national basis, but some things are certainly not. So
No, we're just very limited. We've got a nice supply of what we have, but it's just not the top quality that some states like Wisconsin, Iowa, the raccoon. I mean, if you guys have never seen any of the raccoon out of the triangle, oh my lands, they're just they're different.
I remember going to Kansas the first time and trapping, and we were actually in southern Kansas, so it was almost like a semi-heavy, but it just struck me that hair on them was so straight, and there was no woolly look to it at all. Just nice, straight.
Yes.
The color was good, and I got top lot on it, that is a nice raccoon out there.
It is. And
at least where we were at in Kansas, they were.
when I went to Wisconsin to scrape coon, I didn't charge enough.
It's kind of like it's the big difference between big beavers and little beavers.
I forgot how big they were.
Yeah,
and I didn't charge enough. I'm telling you. And if you're listening, Gary, you owe me money.
The other thing, and then when we were up with Trent up in Masterson up in Michigan trapping, and we caught some coons, and I think I caught the biggest coon I ever caught in my life up there. It was a really big coon, but man, they were not very good quality coon,
right?
And Trent was saying, yeah, we got giant coons, but there's not much to them. So
they are big,
yeah, but they're almost hairy. I mean, they're just not. Our coon are better than theirs, but they just got really good size,
really good size coon.
And that Michigan's a big state. There may be some areas that are okay, but those in that area certainly in southern Michigan were not that great. So,
but I thought we had a good sale. I really do, and we had a lot of like I said, we had some good buyers there, and we had some good sellers.
Looks like we averaged $2.01 on the possum, the grinner. 21 sold. So,
and that was over and above market value, and that was skewed because there were some $5 possums paid.
I was gonna say there's a high of $5 on a possum.
That was paid to a couple kids, I think, that took it.
Yeah,
I
I think he gave $3 on those put up possums. I think
$1.75.
$1.75.
And that was probably a true market value. They were beautiful put up. The buyer may not make any money on them, but I don't think you'll lose any money on them.
They were put up a lot better than I'd have put them up. I'm telling you.
The thing about those is they may not sell for a while. They might be up there for
a couple. I was going to ask you that too, because somebody called here to the shop. He had, I don't even remember what he had at the sale, but he wanted to know what's the longest like something would sit up there. I've never really heard anything over 2 seasons, really. But when the firm market crashed, I had 6 years. 6 years. Well, that's I think kind of a rarity. But let's say in the last 10 to 15 years.
Well, the auction company will tell you too that was a perspective back then. They were trying to hold the market, and so they weren't just like selling stuff cheap.
Right.
But the stuff that they've sent out if they get to the point where they need to reestablish a market, they will let it go.
Right.
At whatever price, and then that'll give them a baseline to start working on establishing a market again. So I think they learned that from the early 90s when things were just struggling just to find a baseline for what any value that stuff had. So so that was part of the reason I think that stretched out to 6 years, because they just didn't want to see the market just completely selling $2 coons or whatever. So, yeah. But anyways, in hindsight, I think they realized that they should have done that probably. So,
I'd sure hate to have their job. I know that.
Exactly. Yeah.
My goodness. People complain about them, but I mean, let's face it, they're in business to make money too.
Well, they're working off commission, so they are looking out for your best interest as well, because they're going to try and get the most they can, so they
as much
get,
as they can get.
So you both are happy at that.
Yeah.
And by the way, and one thing too that a lot of shippers don't know is the buyer pays a commission as well up there. So the buyer pays a commission, and the trapper or the producer's paying a commission to the auction company.
Sure, it's a two-way street.
Yeah. So the buyer may not be paying as big a percentage as the trapper that I can't speak to, but it's a very elaborate setup. It's it's an international auction, so we're talking. Their overhead expenses are
right.
They need to make
money.
They have got to have some income. So,
how much for a runs through NAFA? What's the number?
I don't know. That 2013 year. I don't know. I think if you look at their website, I think there was one that said like they're a $300 million company. Well, clearly they're more than that.
Well, the 2013 year, you guys had enough fur down here to fill a semi.
Yeah.
At each pickup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, some years are definitely better than others, and that was a huge year for them. So
it's crazy.
And they, of course, they're selling a lot of ranch mink now. They just sold. I think they offered almost 4 million mink on this sale. I don't have the sheet in front of me. I may
what I was getting at is they're busy.
Yeah,
and you got to pay people to get it all.
Yeah,
up,
you got to pay
so
people. Yeah,
it's just a lot of work.
I mean, and the office.
Oh yeah, keeping track of all that, barcoding everything and scanning, just unbelievable amount of organization that has to go into keeping everything straight.
Man, I'm lucky to get my boots on the right feet in the morning. Let alone, to go up and this. Man, I couldn't do it. My hat's off to them.
So,
I was going to mention too, for the people that are listening or new to possibly trying to figure out different avenues to sell. NAFA, we mentioned, does have commission that they take out. Our local sale, does too, like we said. But we also give a slight.
if you're a member of Fur Takers, you get the commission that you pay to the association is less. Is only 5%. And if you're not a member, it's 10%. So,
and the reason I bring that up too, not to just let people know, hey, become a member because you can, save a little bit of money and get more back on your fur. I was the one signing people up coming in through the door for lot numbers, and I had to ask them member or not. And I'm not harping on anyone or anything like that. You either got it or you don't got it to be a member. But they would go, well, I only have 10 raccoons. It's not really going to make that much a difference. So they were basing their decision off what kind of fur, it was all about the money of what the payoff would be. But we've been talking a lot this week that just drives me nuts.
Yes. Because you have more of a benefit than just the chance to save 5% on a commission.
Well, to me, it's not even about that.
That's just a drop in the bucket, and it's not about that.
What it's about is
there's roughly 175 to 200,000 trappers licensed trappers in the United States, and that varies.
And that's a lot,
depending on the year what the fur prices are. So you'll have some swings, but there's roughly 175,000.
That's trappers. A lot of people, right?
So when you take the two national trapping organizations, the NTA, National Trappers Association, and Fur Takers of America, they're combined, and assuming there wasn't any crossover, their combined memberships around 12 or 13,000 between the two. So
12 or 13,000 at best.
At best. So and a lot of those are crossover. So in other words, members of both organizations. So we have far less than 10%. That are members of.
They're carrying the load for everyone else.
Yeah, and I
mean, I'm not trying to. If people don't know, they don't know, and that's why I'm saying it. So
the thing is, I mean, we've got serious issues in New Mexico, which we've talked about on other podcasts. Other states with other anti-trapping legislation proposals. We had a referendum initiative in Montana a couple years ago, which fortunately came out in favor of trappers. But a number of states have just continually fought that, and it comes down to the FTA, the NTA, the state associations in that particular state are always instrumental in fighting that directly on the ground there. But the national organizations come in too, and then of course Sportsman's Alliance. So I can't say enough that you just got to be a member and you got to support that stuff. So.
You got to anyway. And the national membership for Fur Takers, we're directly involved with them, so it's $40, and that's you get a year or a monthly magazine.
And to me, the magazine's worth the $40.
Yeah. And let's say
it's an excellent magazine.
If you don't have it, right then and there, that's fine. Join later or whatever. But if you can't come up with even $40. If you go to the Fur Takers website, I set up, there's a donate button. Donate $5.
Yes.
Anything. it goes so far, so long.
One thing about Fur Takers too, it's a volunteer organization, so
Yeah.
very, very few people are actually. I mean, I think they're bookkeeper and there's a couple paid positions, but overall, it is by far all volunteer. So,
And volunteer.
And it's a lot of work.
So it is a lot of work.
And volunteer. If
Yeah.
you're a member, volunteer.
Yeah.
Get out and
but
help.
if you do nothing, at least become a member.
Yes.
Yeah.
So and we'll get off the soapbox, but that just to give you some percentages there.
Why'd you even go there, Pancho?
Well, I just told you, just drive me nuts sitting in bed at night going, gosh darn it.
Oh,
We need some help.
They ruined it pretty good. Never mind. We'll go.
So.
But no, I my fur business, my little business I got, I never dreamed would ever be as big as it was, and is. And I sure do owe a lot of people for helping me. I mean, I had a lot of help from a lot of people, and boy, don't think I don't appreciate it, because I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met a lot of good people. I've met a lot of crooks too. But
That was in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
That was some crazy times.
But like I said, it's been a good ride, and by golly, it's not over with yet. I'm going to keep going on it.
In my the trapping when I was a kid, some of your best memories, for me, and I've always been connected to this for 40 some years, and went through really rough times there in the late 80s, early 90s, and I think a lot of people that would go through what anyone associated with the fur industry went through in those late 80s and early 90s would probably get a bad taste in their mouth and not stick with it.
Right.
And we definitely lost people, but on the other hand, I guess this whole industry, I just love it well enough that I wasn't willing to give up on it, and just have such a great appreciation for it that stuck it out and still here. So
it's history. The fur market, the fur industry, in my opinion, is basically what opened the western states up.
Exactly. Well, it's like
In the 1750s, 1760s, it was the fur industry.
Chase Nose Hatter Beaver.
Yep.
What's the NAFTA bag say since 1640 or something
yeah,
on them?
something like that. And
It's cool.
Because it used to be Hudson Bay Company, and then they changed the name to North American Fur Auctions I believe that was in the early 90s, the very late 80s, something like that. So
I mean, the best opening picture I've ever seen in a movie is Revenant. What are they doing when the movie opens?
trapping beaver.
They're trapping beaver, and there's like 25 fleshing beams set up there where they're fleshing beaver, and I'm thinking, go for it, guys.
The only thing about that scene that wasn't very accurate is it was really bloody and gory, and it's not really like that.
Well,
That's
was
Hollywood, you gotta make it.
Yeah.
that was one thing about that. Is like, what?
But it's part of history, and if you like history, start reading a lot of the books about the early trappers. The city of St. Louis, I saw a thing. I'm also in the construction business, and I saw a thing 6 months ago where they had remodeled a building in St. Louis. It was an old building, and it was, I forget, but carved in the stone above the door, it was a fur warehouse. They've turned it into a restaurant and condominium now. St. Louis was a big fur industry town.
Mm-hmm.
I like history, and it's just it makes me feel good to be part of it.
It's got that romantic mystique to it that I think every time I go trap beavers, I always think about that. It's just
we're carrying on a
cool.
tradition.
Mm-hmm.
We're carrying on the tradition that's been around for 300 years, 400 years. It's awesome. So,
any concluders, or is that pretty much wrapping it up?
Well, I'm gonna was listening to the hearing at when they're doing these hearings in New Mexico because they want to make it illegal to trap on public ground, and one of the antis was saying, there's no need for this. We've evolved beyond this. We just don't need to do something that's so barbaric, in her words. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought that for one thing, the animals haven't evolved. They're the same in our lifetime, in our span of human lifetime.
Right.
And they have evolved to the point where they're more used to people. They can adapt to people. So I will give her that as far as, but trappers, we have the innovations that we have come up with in equipment, in treatment of the animal and in the equipment. All of those things have gotten so much better despite great fur prices. You know, with all the modern equipment that we have, we've done a great job monitoring ourselves.
Yep.
You know, I think all of our state governments have everything in place as far as for bear biologists, and we've got laws, and we've got conservation officers. Everything we have actually evolved quite well,
Yes, we
despite
have.
what this woman said. You know, in her mind. So that's my concluder. And you know, we still sell fur. It's part of being a trapper, but it certainly isn't the driving force behind what I do as a trapper. Because I could go to McDonald's probably and make more money. You know, if it was all about, if it was just strictly about money.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, that's my concluder.
But like the podcast you had last week with our biologist, you know, I heard you tell a story about the beaver. You know, people buy their 5-acre spot that has a creek coming through it, and they see a beaver, and they're thinking, "Oh, so we're out here with nature." You
And
know,
it's awesome. Yeah.
It reminds me of a story of Paul Brown, a guy from Kentucky. He was an awesome guy. He had a school teacher call him, and she had just bought this place, and it was a real nice place, had a creek running through it, had an asphalt driveway with trees lining the driveway. And she called him, and because she had a beaver that was cutting her trees down. And she said, I would like for you to come catch the beaver. Paul said, okay, here's what it's going to cost you, blah, blah, blah. She said, well, I want you to keep it alive and turn it loose. And Paul said, I won't do that. You know, and he said, I'm not going to take your problem and make it somebody else's problem. She said, well, then I don't want you to come get it. Well, a week went by, and she calls him again. She said, would you please come get the beaver? He said, lady, I'm not going to turn the beaver loose on somebody else's property. Well, just think about it if you would, because it's cut down another tree. And 2 weeks goes by, and the lady calls and says, come kill this damn beaver. You know, she said, it cut a tree down across my driveway, and I can't get out. You know,
That's awesome.
I mean, we've... you always have those loose cannons and those people, like you said, that just...
Well, trappers were always the problem until they need us.
Yes, and you always have you are always going to have people in every activity that do the wrong thing, but mostly the trappers. If we exterminate the raccoons, then we're not going to be able to trap raccoons.
Yeah, so that's not on our agenda.
No,
at all.
No, we have come to the point where we appreciate. I mean, we've always appreciated what we have, but the equipment that we have nowadays is just, it's awesome.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. So,
Good stuff.
I think just being around this, and like I said, you guys are telling all your old stories about the fur boom and all that, and when I got started, prices weren't so hot. So I will never look at it that way. I don't have that to look back on. So I trapped because I thought it was cool but just seeing how Charlie talks about it, you can tell, you can hear it when he's talking about whatever subject.
Oh, yeah.
And talking to you, how much you guys have, love it all these years, no matter what, all the people you've met, the people that helped you out, and the family that all comes with this.
yes.
And that's what the 7B is all about, too. That it's become a family. So we'll be a trapper for the rest of my life. I know that for sure. So it's...
Well, let me ask you this. You weren't here in the boom like Charlie and I were. But what was it, 3 years ago? Brady?
Mm-hmm.
You started taking Brady.
Yeah, this is a buddy of mine's little boy.
Do you remember the look on Brady's face when he first caught a critter?
No, I wasn't there.
But
But he called me.
Yeah, that's that's what it's.
Yep.
You make memories, and that's what it's about.
They found some beaver action in the backyard and showed the kid a couple things, and he went out first with dog proofs with his dad and caught some coons, and then I went over there and helped him out with catching some beavers. We ended up catching, 7 or 8 beaver off this little spot, and the kid, his boy was more interested than my buddy was. He was interested, but it didn't take over him like it does us.
Yes.
But his boy kind of got the bug, and when winter came around for this season, he was back there catching coon. He caught a couple coons in the backyard, and, catching them around trying to get in the trash can, I think he said. But it's just neat to see, and that's one thing I think we all get to enjoy when we do our trapper ads, and we help at a Backwater Legacies camp. Me and Charlie do, and we deal with a lot of kids and getting them started. Then there's some that show up in here 5-6 years later, and they're starting to drive a truck. It's like,
right.
Man, they're coming up to get some trapping stuff, and it's just neat to see how it's all
right. And one thing we are tentatively going to do late July, most likely, is we're going to have a Saturday. We're going to have a kids trapping day here at Who's Your Trapper. It'll be with fur takers, and we're just going to spend a whole day. It's not going to be a stressful classroom type setting. We're just going to make it.
No,
it'll be
it's going to be fun.
It'll be a good fun day. So,
and we'll have as much fun as the kids will.
Yeah. So that's something we're going to do. We haven't set a date yet. We haven't worked through all the details, but just to put a bug out there in anyone's ear that's from this area of Indiana, more than welcome. Just keep an eye out. We'll put the details.
We'll
up
put
once we get it worked out. So
the details, since it's here at Hoosier Trapper Supply, the details will be posted on his Facebook page there, and then also Fur Takers of America Chapter 7B has their own personal page as well, where I post a lot of events that are going on, and that one will definitely be up once we figure out the exact date and time.
Right.
So
we're looking forward to doing that. I think it's going to be
it'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a good fun day. So,
all right,
come meet Poncho and Lefty.
Yes, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll not sure what our next episode will be, but I'll figure it out later. But thanks for hanging in.